Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Garner, Director of Research at Emerald Advisors, and I'm joined here today by our mascot, Digby the Groundhog, as well as Dr. Terry Smith, Director of Life Sciences Research for Emerald and a Portfolio Manager of the FM Emerald Life Sciences Innovation ETF. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you.
Today, we are here to talk about the latest white paper released by Emerald entitled Biotechnology and Big Pharma's Imperative for M&A. So Terry, you and Gibby Brook worked on this white paper, and this is a theme that you've mentioned here on the air with us before, but why is it that you think the biotechnology industry is primed for merger and acquisition activity?
There's really kind of two things behind this. There's both a push from the industry maturing and also a pull from pharma having a need to fill a lot of pipelines. I'll start on the pull side. Pharma, about half of their sales, big pharma's sales, are going to go away by the year 2030. That means they'll face generic competition. So they need to fill this pipeline with some pretty big drugs. They've known this was coming for a while. We've seen something like this in the late 2010s happen where we had a bunch of biotech companies be acquired, and right now they're again buying companies to fill the revenue loss that they're looking at over the next 5 to 6 years. On the biotech side, we have a lot of companies that have been maturing really nicely. About half of the drugs in clinical development are controlled by smaller companies. More than half of the drugs approved last year were from smaller companies. So this is a trend that's been happening as we have the industry getting more mature and we have pharma needing large drugs to fill their pipeline. Pharma does a great job of marketing drugs, but they're not so good at being nimble and innovative and developing the new drugs. So the small companies kind of do the development and innovation, and then pharma does the acquisition and markets them and defends the IP.
In the white paper, you argue that this trend is uniquely favorable for small and mid-cap investors. Why is that?
So some years you'll see something like there was $140 billion in pharma M&A, and that was a good year. But often it's driven by one or two large deals for $50 or $70 billion. Lately what's been happening is pharma has been buying smaller companies, more bite size, in the $1 to $10 billion range because they can do a bunch of these. They can buy them towards the end of phase 3 or right before they're about to hit the market and they get too expensive. And it's just a nice bite-sized deal that everyone can do. There was a pharma company did this called a string of pearls back in the 2010s. We're seeing a lot of big pharma do the same type of thing where they can kind of diversify their risks because it is riskier when you're buying a company that doesn't have a drug yet approved. They can manage to risk $1 to $2 to $3 to $5 billion. You can't really mess up on a $30, $40, $50 billion acquisition. So that's kind of why we're seeing a lot of the M&A come from the smaller companies or the small cap land, because that's where the companies that are developing drugs that could be $1 billion in peak sales, yet their valuation is not huge.
That makes sense. So you also talked about in the white paper that there are certain areas, focus areas, markets that we're likely to see more of the M&A activity concentrated in those areas. So what areas are they and why those particular areas?
So there's two answers to this as well. The areas that we're seeing a lot of activity would be the typical suspects. They call it I&I, which is immunology and inflammation. This would be things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, atopic dermatitis. These autoimmune markets are very large. You can't watch anything on TV without seeing a Skyrizi ad. This is a gigantic market, and it's only getting bigger as more patients are diagnosed and more patients are taking advanced biologics. Other areas that we're seeing M&A would be oncology. Oncology is a very large market for pharma. They're losing a lot of sales from both I&I and oncology. So those are two of the areas we're seeing a lot of M&A. In addition, cardiovascular is kind of moving up the charts lately. We've had some good cardiovascular launches, and these are the types of markets that smaller companies really have a hard time accessing by themselves because you have to hit so many cardiologists. A lot of these studies, they need outcome studies, which means you need to show that the patients actually live longer. Those are really hard for smaller companies to do, and those are honestly better done in the hands of a big pharma company. So pharma has infrastructure in all three of these verticals, and for one reason or another, kind of different reasons between the three, we've been seeing a lot of M&A activity in that space.
One final question for you today. Can you talk about a little bit about the research process that you employ? At Emerald, we talk a lot about our 10-step research process. And how does that position Emerald through the work that you're doing to participate in this trend?
Yeah, sure. We do a lot of work in reading the primary literature. When these papers are published, we read them. We talk to the key opinion leaders who are the investigators on these sites. We have a really deep understanding of the science involved. We like diseases where we understand the cause of the disease. So when you understand the disease and you understand the science of the drug, you have a better chance of getting this right. We talk to hundreds of companies a year in the life sciences realm alone, and we ask competitors about their drugs. We have some institutional knowledge. I've been doing this for 20 years now. I sometimes remember when the first drug in this class was approved, and I was very close to that management team. So I remember the nuances and the pitfalls that those guys ran into. And I'm finding over the last couple of years, that's really been a gigantic source of an advantage for me.
Yeah, terrific. Well, Terry, fascinating topic. Thank you for being here with us today. And for our viewers out there, if you'd like to access a copy of the white paper, I would direct you to our website, teamemerald.com or emeraldetfs.com. So for Terry Smith, our mascot, Digby, and myself, thank you for being here with us today. We appreciate you joining in and viewing the interview. Thank you.